March 15th, 2026. It's time to start searching for framing stock for the boat. Instead of going to a lumber yard or a specialty wood dealer, I thought I'd try it the old-fashioned way, walking into the forest and looking for the right trees. Luckily, I have a friend with some on his land that just might work. My name is Joshua. I used to be a carpenter in the city, but then I had the bright idea to drag a 32-foot wooden sailboat into the woods of eastern Canada where I'm living off-grid. Built in Japan in 1966, for almost half a century she sailed the seven seas only to be marooned on the other side of the world. I aim to fix that. The only problem, I've never worked on a boat before. This is a boat in the woods. I'm looking for a very specific tree, one with a few names: larch, tamarack, or as it's known locally, hackmatack. I'll just stick with larch. I want to use larch for a few reasons. One, it's available locally. I'm a big believer in using the materials around us for building whenever possible. Two, of our local tree species, it's one of the most rot resistant, as well as being plenty strong. Only black locust is superior, and while it does grow here, it was introduced and was most often planted as an ornamental, so it's not as common. And three, it's what was traditionally used in Nova Scotia for boat frames. In the early 90s, a man named David Walker conducted a survey of the boat builders operating in Nova Scotia. It's genuinely an interesting read and a great effort to preserve the knowledge of what was even back then a dying trade. In it, he writes, "On boats with curved hulls, frames and timbers are always steam-bent oak or hackmatack, with the occasional builder using ash. Virtually everyone considered hackmatack best, even those using oak." I believe he's referring to our local red oak, which is so porous that you can use a small piece of it as a straw. That porosity causes red oak to rot quickly in wet environments, and so I've been told using it in boats is frowned upon. White oak doesn't grow here, and though we have plenty of ash, it also rots quickly. With some bright orange strips of an old grocery bag and a stable gun, I walked my friend's land, marking larches that looked suitable for framing stock. I tried to space out the trees I might harvest as much as possible. I also intend on planting my own larch saplings, but I'll have to wait for the cones to reach maturity in the fall. Maybe one day someone will use a larch that I plant to build their own boat. All said, I flagged 11 trees, but to start, I think I'm only going to cut one to mill up as a test. I want to be certain that I'll be able to successfully steam bend green larch into one of the replacement frames before I cut that many down. Next, I needed a way to mill them. For that, I bought an old Husqvarna 266 and a cheap chainsaw mill. The 266 is probably underpowered, but hopefully the larch isn't too hard to cut. Cool. I'm also running a skip tooth ripping chain, and I'm only cutting them to the dimensions that allow me to run the timbers through a bandsaw for final dimensioning. We'll see how it does, but I can keep an eye out for a more powerful saw. I can't be the only one that struggles with this. How did it? Lastly, I needed a way to move everything. The last couple trips I made to the sawmill were punishing for the RAV. I had so much weight on the roof rack that the crossbars were bending down and touching the roof as I was driving. So I decided to keep an eye out for a cheap truck, finding one last month that was only a few hours away from home. I hitched a ride with my friend Brody to the airport, and then I took a taxi the rest of the way to where the truck was. It's pretty sweet. It's a 2000 Ford F-150 with 4x4 and a 5-speed manual. Plus it has a snowplow and a rack over the bed that will make transporting lumber so much easier.
Do the math now.
After topping up the tires, I hopped in and enjoyed the slow drive home on the back roads. Yikes. She does need a bit of work before the upcoming safety inspection. Rear brakes, some minor electrical, and a bunch of rust repair. Chad let me use his shop, which has once again saved my butt. I thought I would get the big job out of the way first by rebuilding the rear drum brakes. I hate working on drum brakes, mostly because I always put something in wrong and have to start over again. So, skill issue, I guess. Anyways, it took all day, but I finally finished one side. The next day, I tackled the other side, but the parking brake cable was seized, so I couldn't finish until I got a new cable. I knocked off some of the smaller jobs, like changing the air filter, and installing a proper trailer hitch receiver.
Nope. Thank you. Well, I hope that opens enough.
Next, I bled the brakes solo since Chad wasn't available at that time. The day after, I brought the truck outside, pressure washed underneath, and let the engine warm up so that I could do an oil change.
Is this a metric drain plug? Why, Ford? Okay. It's a good design.
I was still waiting on the brake cable, so I got started on the rust repair.
Yeah.
Just before I flew to BC in February, I stopped at the junkyard to grab a door from an F-150 there. Since I only needed a small part of it to repair my door, I used some of the sheet metal to make patches for the box. I used a piece of cardstock to make a template, traced it onto the sheet metal, and cut it out with pneumatic shears. Then I riveted it using steel pop rivets. I like the look of intentionally rough repairs on a work truck. But apparently body panels have to be welded, so I drilled some of them out and then Chad plug welded the holes. While I was doing that, Chad did an awesome job fixing the catalytic converter and exhaust system. Later, my new brake cable came in, so I installed it and finally buttoned up the rear brakes. I also replaced a leaky valve stem and then finished up the rough patch job on the bed.
Oh man,
It honestly looks pretty goofy, but like I said, I don't mind that on a work truck. Next was the other big job, the rotten driver's door. I chopped off the rusty door bottom and then cut the bottom off the junkyard door, adjusting it until it fit nicely over mine. Cut here.
Yeah, do the same thing, just come down a little bit more, but this is fit really good. Yeah. And then do your holes across there.
Okay.
Okay, the front end looks goodly there.
Yep.
Watch your eyes.
Okay. Once it was sandblasted and hole punched, Chad plug welded it in place while I finished some bracing on the box. And that's where things stand now. I would have liked to get it done, but I'm out of time this week. Next week, I'll finish the door, and then the truck is ready for the road and hauling some logs.